Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for so many of my clients: food fear and how to move beyond it in a way that actually supports gut healing. If you've ever found yourself afraid to eat something because it might trigger pain, bloating, or unpredictable symptoms, this conversation is for you today. We're going to talk about how long term food fear can actually harm gut health, steps to reintroduce food safely and confidently, the mindset shift needed to truly embrace food freedom, and how to build a gut health plan that supports both your body and your peace of mind. So let's start with talking about, why is long-term food fear hurting you and not helping you? Food fear is really damaging, even though it usually comes from a good place. Most people I talked to didn't start out intending to restrict their diet forever. Maybe you were told to follow low FODMAP or eliminate gluten and dairy, or that you had food sensitivities, or you're trying to cut out sugar. And in the beginning, that can actually be helpful. Restrictive diets can reduce inflammation, calm symptoms. They're one of our most wonderful tools for getting relief fast when done properly. And they give you much needed relief. But here's the problem: what's meant to be a short term tool often becomes a long term lifestyle. People get stuck in the elimination phase because they feel afraid to reintroduce foods, and staying there too long can cause more harm than good. So let's talk about what happens when your diet stays too limited. And I see this all the time. I can't tell you how many clients come to me. They've been on the low FODMAP diet for years. And guess what? They're still struggling. They probably saw, a lot of them, some improvement initially, maybe not fully. Maybe there was initial improvement, but the symptoms came back. And we're going to talk today about why that happened. First, let's talk about what happens when your diet stays too limited. The first one is nutritional deficiencies, especially with a lot of these gut health diets like the low FODMAP diet or a SIBO specific diet, which we use a lot here at Nutrition Resolution. We're cutting out a lot of healthy foods. Unfortunately, the healthiest foods are the most difficult to tolerate for many people with digestive issues. And so we're cutting out fruits, many different, not all of them, but many different fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds. These are your healthy plant foods that are full of nutrients. So when you're avoiding a bunch of foods, it becomes even harder to meet your body's nutritional needs. Things like fiber, B vitamins, magnesium, prebiotics. These are just a few nutrients that take a hit when you're on an overly restrictive diet. And ironically, deficiencies in these can actually make digestive issues worse, not better. Secondly, your gut microbiome starts to suffer. Our gut bacteria thrives on variety, especially variety of plant-based diversity. And if you're only eating the same few safe foods over and over again, you're not feeding your microbes what they need. This can reduce microbial diversity, bacterial diversity, which is linked to everything from poor digestion to immune imbalance, autoimmune issues, inflammation, and even mood changes, because a lot of our happy hormones, hormones in general, have a strong gut component. Serotonin is produced in the gut. Not having a good microbial diversity can affect a lot of things. And the other thing I see is, when you have a lower microbial diversity, you can get a lot of the same symptoms that, say, an overgrowth of less favorable bacteria cause. So, like things like bloating, loose stools. A lot of times people will have bacterial overgrowth that's responsible for those symptoms, but we can also get some of those symptoms when we just have low numbers of good bacteria. And we become more and more sensitive to foods over time, because when we don't have a diverse microbiome, it's harder to handle things like fiber, which really decreases the number of foods we can tolerate, or things like FODMAPs. It's almost our microbiome becomes weak and it can't do any heavy lifting anymore. So that's a big one. Third, food fear creates more anxiety around eating. Every meal starts to feel like a potential minefield. You start second guessing every bite. You stop going out to restaurants, you bring your own food to social events, and that is just exhausting. And here's the thing, chronic stress and anxiety, which you can get from following a restricted diet, directly affects the gut. So it's a two-way street. And the more anxious you are around food, the harder it becomes for your gut to function properly. It really is becomes a vicious cycle. And I've definitely seen that where the mine are so stressed about the diet they're on that we don't see the progress we expect to see with the diet. So then it defeats the whole purpose, and then you're just miserable. And lastly, the more you avoid foods, the more sensitive your body becomes over time. I mentioned this earlier. I know it sounds backwards, but it's true. If you're not regularly challenging your system, your tolerance actually goes down. Just like muscles that get weaker when you stop using them, your digestive system loses resilience when it's not exposed to a wide range of foods. So even though it can feel safe to stick to a short list of approved foods over time, that safety comes at a cost. Your gut is meant to be adaptable. It's meant to handle different foods, different fibers, different situations, but it needs regular nourishment and diversity to stay strong and flexible. So, how do we reintroduce foods with confidence? Okay, so now that we've talked about why long-term restriction can actually backfire, how do we reintroduce foods in a way that feels safe and manageable instead of overwhelming and scary? So, first, take a deep breath. This part can feel scary, and that's totally normal. What I want you to know is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to go from eating five foods to 50 overnight. Reintroduction can and should be gradual, thoughtful, and based on where you are right now. So, here's the gentle process I often walk my clients through. Step one is you start small and really small. I use the word ridiculously small because in this way, a bite or two of food you've been avoiding is not going to be that threatening and it does not have the potential to cause any major flare up of symptoms. So we're talking about even if it's one little bite, we're not talking about a full serving of anything initially. And the more nervous you are, the smaller that initial serving is going to be. Your goal is not at this point to test your limits, it's just to open the door. That alone can help shift your mindset from fear to curiosity. So, step two, then try the food on its own. Don't test a food in a giant mixed meal where you won't be able to tell what caused what. Keep it simple. You can eat the food with other foods. So I don't mean to say you have to eat the food in between meals by itself, but you want to make that the only different food that you eat that day and maybe even the next day. That way, you're isolating your variables. And if you do have a reaction, you'll know exactly what food caused it. So you only introduce one new food at a time. And then step three, you track your response. None of us remember what we did 2 days ago, much less 2 weeks ago. You got to write everything down and you're going to want to track so that you can really pay attention to patterns over time and eventually be really clear on what you tolerate and what you don't. So you want to track symptoms, things like bloating, gas, stool changes, pain, discomfort, but also tune in to how you feel emotionally. Did I feel anxious before the meal? Did you feel empowered after trying it? Because these emotional cues matter just as much as the digestive ones, because they influence your overall relationship with food. So I would track your symptoms, how you feel before, during, and after emotionally. And I would also track how much you ate of the food, how it was prepared, the specific food, brand, a lot of detail because the details make a difference. What, how much, that's really what you want to track. And then keep in mind that you're watching for a window of time. So, step four is give it space. Wait a day or two, see how your body responds, not just in the next hour, but across a full 24 to 48-hour window. We can have immediate responses to food. We can have delayed responses to food. For example, if I have pancreatic insufficiency and I don't digest fats well and I eat a high fat meal, I'll be running to the bathroom with diarrhea before I even finish the meal or right after. Whereas if I have an overgrowth of dysbiosis, unfriendly bacteria in the large intestine, I'm going to eat a food today, maybe that's high FODMAP, and then I won't have symptoms till tomorrow morning. Then I'll start to get the bloating, the discomfort. So those are two examples of what can happen. It can be immediate or it can be longer term. So give it that space before you start adding other foods in that you're challenging, because if you get too many variables in the mix, you're not going to know what is triggering. Now, after you give it space, you give it that 24 to 48-hour window. Then, if it went okay, try again and try a slightly larger portion this time. And then step five is you build from there. If it continues to go well, you start incorporating that food into other meals more regularly. And when you do this, you're retraining your gut and your brain to feel safe with it again. The biggest mindset shift here is reintroduction is not a pass fail test. It's not about being perfect. It's about collecting information and building confidence. Even if a food doesn't go well the first time, that doesn't mean that it's off limits forever. It might just mean your gut needs more support before trying it again. It might mean the timing wasn't right. There might have been other factors and variables affecting your digestion that day. It could mean you can't tolerate that portion you tried. You can tolerate maybe a smaller portion, though. Or maybe it means you can't tolerate a food every single day, but perhaps you can tolerate it once every 3 days. Typically, a food will not affect you at all after 72 hours. There are some exceptions to that. So, in general, a food will only affect you up to 72 hours. So, having a food that maybe you feel like it's weird. Sometimes I tolerate that food, sometimes I don't. Generally, if you have it twice a week, spaced out every 3 days or so, you'll be fine. And if you're not fine with a full portion, you could try a smaller portion. So, this process is all about progress over perfection. Every bite you try, every fear you face, that's a win. So, how do we make the mental shift toward food freedom? Here's the thing about this: healing your gut isn't just about what you eat, it's also about how you think about food. So many of my clients come to me saying they just want to feel normal again. They're scared to eat out with their friends. They don't trust their body, that their body's unpredictable. They don't know how they're going to wake up in the morning. You don't know how your body's going to be that day. What's going to happen? What if I go out to eat? Am I going to be okay? And I get it. When food has caused you pain, when you've had flare ups, discomfort, embarrassing bathroom episodes, accidents, or just symptoms that disrupt your life on a regular basis, it makes sense to want to avoid anything that might set it off again. Here's where things get tricky. That protective instinct, which is understandable, can turn into fear. And when food fear starts to take the wheel, it adds a whole new layer of stress, not just mentally, but physiologically. Your brain and your gut are in constant communication through the gut brain axis. So when you're stressed or anxious about food, your body feels that. Your body doesn't know the difference between you being stressed about maybe having to run to the bathroom with diarrhea in the middle of a meeting and you running from a bear to save your life. And if you're in anxiety and panic over food, your body's going to react with the intensity of a bear is about to kill me. So that has a tremendous effect on our physiology. It can slow your digestion, it can heighten your sensitivity to pain and discomfort, and it can make your symptoms worse, even if the food itself was not the real issue. So, what starts as an attempt to protect yourself ends up feeding the cycle. You eat less, you get more anxious, your gut becomes more reactive, and the food and the fear grows stronger. That's why one of the most important shifts in gut healing is going from fear based avoidance to curiosity-based exploration. Instead of thinking, what if this food makes me feel sick? Try asking what might be possible if I gently challenge my fear today. It might mean trying a food you've avoided for months. It might mean eating something you didn't cook yourself. It might mean sitting down to a meal without overthinking every ingredient. And what I want you to know, you don't have to wait until you're 100% healed, in quotes, healed, to start that process. Food freedom is not a finish line, it's a mindset you build over time. So every time you approach food with curiosity instead of fear, you teach your body and your brain that it's safe to expand, that you're capable of navigating the discomfort if it comes up, and that you're no longer letting fear make the rules. So maybe today, instead of asking, what should I avoid? You ask, what's one small thing I can do to build trust with my body again? And that's where the healing starts. So, how do we build a sustainable gut health plan? What does it actually look like? It's not about following rigid rules. It's not about cutting out every food that might possibly cause a symptom. And it's definitely not about striving for the perfect diet because that does not exist. And the diet that's right for you today is not necessarily the diet that's right for you a few weeks or a few months or years down the road. A sustainable gut health plan is one that works for you, your lifestyle, your goals, your preferences, and your situation at the moment. It should support long-term health, though, even if it's managing something else in the moment. So, our diet should not just be designed to get us through the week, although I know often, especially at first, that's how it feels. But we want to build it to also support long-term health. So let's talk about what that really means. First, it means eating a variety of plant foods to nourish your gut microbiome. And diversity is the key here. It can be scary to hear this, and my clients often react with, what? You want me to eat more than 30 plant foods per week? I can't even tolerate broccoli. I can't eat salads. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? So, first of all, if our goal is 30, we're not talking about doing that this week. We're talking about building toward that gradually. And so, the first step is, where are you at now? If you're eating 10 plant foods a week, we're going to build little by little in small steps, maybe adding one or two per week. So that over weeks and months, you're making your way toward that goal of 30. Now, plant foods do not just mean vegetables. I'm not saying to eat 30 different vegetables every week. I'm saying plant food. So that's most of our food groups. That's fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes. That's most of our food groups because each different type of plant feeds different beneficial bacteria. And the more diverse your gut bugs are, the more resilient your digestion becomes. And that's one reason why staying stuck on the same five safe foods keeps people in a cycle of reactivity. Your gut needs the variety to thrive. So, second, this building a sustainable gut health plan means honoring your symptoms without overreacting to every flare. You're gonna have ups and downs, and that's normal. I have clients that they'll be doing well, will initially build a diet that calms their symptoms down, and that can be just so impactful when you've been suffering for years and you finally figured out what to eat to feel better. It's such a relief. So when they have their first setback, which setbacks are going to happen for a few reasons, because issues other than food can trigger symptoms, things like stress, things like other changes. Let's say you have to start a new medication or we change up your supplements. We don't know yet how you're going to tolerate the next phase of supplements. Things like moving forward to a reintroduction process. Maybe you try to reintroduce the food and it goes poorly. So we are going to have hiccups in the road. And that's just part of the problem, but it can be so discouraging when that happens after you finally found relief because emotionally it makes you feel like you're back at square one because the symptoms feel the same as when you were at square one. But that's not true, especially when we've triggered symptoms with something that we strategically have added, whether it be a supplement or food. At least we know what caused it. We can remove that item and we know that your symptoms will calm down right away. So it's normal to have ups and downs in the process. Our goal with food reintroduction is to make them minimal. So if you are going to have a symptom, because you introduce just a small amount, that symptom is very minor. It's not severe, it's not major. And if you have one bad reaction, it does not mean that you've ruined all your progress, that you're back to square one, or that you need to cut out five more foods. We want to zoom out and look at the big picture, what's happening overall, not just for one meal. And that helps you stay grounded and avoid slipping back into fear mode. Third, we used tools like testing or supplements strategically, not as a permanent crutch. If you're taking 5, 10, 15 different supplements just so you can eat a salad, that might be okay for a short period of time. And we use supplements here at Nutrition Resolution strategically, but that is not your end all be all plan. It should not be. Stool testing, SIBO breath test, and targeted supplements are absolute game changers when used properly, and they are a critical part of the process when it comes to rebalancing your gut, supporting digestion, improving motility, calming inflammation, and clearing out an overgrowth. And here at our practice at Nutrition Resolution, these tools are a significant part of how we're able to help so many people who've been suffering for years, people who were told their labs were normal, who had visited renowned standard medicine practices across the country, who were stuck on restricted diets and had no idea why their symptoms weren't improving. Because when we bring in the right testing, the right support, we look at actual functional digestion and the microbiome, everything starts to click. But what I want you to remember is supplements are not the plan. There's the support beams. You don't need to be on 10 different pills forever just to feel okay. Supplements are meant to move you through the healing process, not keep you dependent on them indefinitely. And that's why we follow a phased approach to healing. There is a time to focus on clearing, a time to focus on rebuilding, and a time to expand. And the tools we use change as we move through each phase. But these core principles we've talked about, like food variety, building resilience, and shifting your mindset around foods, those apply at every stage. They are the foundation. They're what makes your gut healing sustainable long term, no matter what phase you're in. Yes, supplements and testing are powerful and they're often necessary, but the goal is always to support the body so that eventually it can thrive with less intervention, not more. And finally, a sustainable gut health plan gives you the flexibility and confidence to eat in real life, travel, holidays, family dinners, birthday parties, even the occasional spontaneous meal out. Because food is not just fuel, it's joy, it's culture, connection, and memories. Your gut health plan should support living, not isolate you from it. That's why my goal with every client that we work with here is to build a gut that can tolerate more, not less. More food variety, more freedom, more spontaneity, and more confidence because healing is not about restriction, it's about resilience. And when you support your gut in the right way, it becomes less fragile and more adaptable so that you can live your life without food fear and in the driver's seat. So if you're stuck in food fear right now, I just want you to know that you're not alone and there is a way out. Healing your gut does not mean eating perfectly or avoiding everything that makes you nervous. It starts with understanding your symptoms, supporting your gut with the right tools, and gradually expanding, not restricting your diet. If you're looking for a gentle first step, I have a free resource I highly recommend. This is my gut building veggie mash. It's a simple, nourishing way to feed your good bacteria and rebuild resilience without overwhelming your system. With this, you can start with just 1 tablespoon size frozen cube and slowly scale up. It's basically you go through the grocery store here in Arizona, you can go to Sprouts, you grab a handful of 10 to 15 different vegetables, whatever you can grab by one handful of. So 10 to 15 different vegetables. You come home, you blend it up you chop them up. In my gut building veggie mash, there are quite a few root vegetables. So for those, you steam them. For the greens, you chop them up. You just chop them up and then you blend it all together in a food processor in batches and you spread it out. You can spread it out onto a cookie sheet, but I recommend just getting a bunch of ice cube trays and mashing it into the ice cube trays. And then you freeze them. And then you just pop out a 1 tablespoon portion. This strategy gives you 10 to 15 different vegetables in 1 tablespoon. Again, we're talking about diversity here. We're not talking about amounts, especially initially when you're just reintroducing. So this is just a wonderful strategy. I use it with even our most sensitive clients, their most sensitive systems as a starting point. 1 tablespoon does not give you enough of anything to cause a problem when there's 10 to 15 different vegetables in there, and you can let your system get used to that 1 tablespoon per day and then build gradually from there on the amount. And ultimately, then it helps you branch out into more normal servings of these different things. It also just helps you get to that goal of 30 different plant foods per week in a more practical way. It's easy because you can just make it. It takes a couple hours. You make it once every few weeks, and then you're good for the month, maybe. And it's also a great way to start reintroducing FODMAPs if you've been low FODMAP. So people ask me, should I make the veggie mash low FODMAP? You can, and it all depends on your fear level. If you are really nervous, make it low FODMAP. You're still benefiting from the diversity there. You're still feeding good bacteria, even with low FODMAP foods. But you don't have to. Even if you included high FODMAP foods, if you go to the Monash app and you look up high FODMAP food, let's say Brussels sprouts, I believe one Brussels sprout is actually low FODMAP. It's just that from a practical standpoint, who would just make one Brussels sprout? But in the veggie mash, you can eat less than one Brussels sprout in a serving. So even if you include high FODMAP foods in the veggie mash, you're going to get a low FODMAP portion. And so it's a really great way to step out if you're really nervous or if your system is really sensitive to start to gradually introduce those high FODMAP foods. I'll drop the link in the show notes so you can grab the veggie mash guide and recipe for free. And if you're ready to go deeper and get personalized support, we actually are very excited to announce that it's now more accessible than ever to work with us one-on-one. We now offer flexible payment plans through Klarna, Afterpay, and Affirm so that you can say yes to your health, get started right away with one-on-one personalized support and pay over time in a way that fits with your budget. There's a multitude of different payment plans, making everything super affordable because I know out-of-pocket care can be such a barrier, but not anymore with these options. It starts with a free 15-minute call. So I'll put that link in the show notes as well for you to schedule a call with us. From there, we'll map out a program that's tailored to fit your needs and meet your goals, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much for joining us today. Share this with someone who might need a little encouragement.